Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. Thank you for joining us. Today, I want to introduce you to a former Marine.
Former Marine, sure.
Of 25 years, or
Yep.
20, Professor Michael Moffett, right?
It's me. Yep.
Welcome
Thanks,
to the
Kevin.
show.
Great to be back in Nashua.
All right. Well, I know you were on a previous show, a Fairy Tale Access or
With
something.
Denise, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm glad that you weathered the storm. Today is probably the last storm of the year, of the winter.
I hope so.
And that was quite the drive you took. So, you're a former Marine, you're a professor, you teach at what school?
NHTI, Concord School, formerly known as New Hampshire Technical Institute. I teach sports management, and I've taught history and English in the past as well.
How long have you been a teacher?
Gosh, well, I got out of college back in '78, believe it or not, and I taught high school history for 4 years, and then went in the Marine Corps and got out, went back in the reserves, but I got my master's degree at Plymouth State, and I taught at Plymouth, and eventually migrated into management and sports management.
So you're into sports management?
Yes, yeah. I've always been a sports guy.
Right. And now you've spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, correct?
No, not a lot of time. I went over in February of 2010, and I was there until May of 2010. So that was the time period I was there.
That's enough time for me.
Well, I kind of was ready to come home, but you know, I'm a Marine, and you want to go where stuff's happening, and
right.
Like so many Marines, you want to go where the action is, and then once you get there, you're kind of looking at the calendar, saying, okay, when do I head home? But that's the way it goes.
And when you were over there, you were as a historian as well?
Yeah, I'm an infantry officer, you know, always an infantry officer. But in my last year, I had been doing some special assignments with Marine Corps University's History Division. And I had the chance to go over there as a field historian. And my mission was to travel around and connect with Marines and interview Marines and get photos and gather some documents and be in a position to help document and tell the story, the history of Marine operations in Afghanistan, Helmand Province. So it was a great, for me, to finish my career, a great chance to get where the action was. And as a lieutenant colonel, to be in a position with some rank to kind of chart my own course and look at the map and sit in on meetings and figure out what's happening and where the action is and who's doing what, and then get in a helicopter or a convoy and go to that outpost and talk to the Marines there and let them tell their stories and help to document the history of our operations there.
That had to have been very interesting. When you were over there and you were interviewing them, you also had you met an interpreter.
I did, yes.
And that's one of the reasons why you're here today, to talk a little bit about this interpreter that you met, and his name is Fahim?
Fahim Fazli, F-A-H-I-M, Fahim Fazli, Hollywood actor who improbably was in Afghanistan, actually back to Afghanistan. He was a native Afghan, born the same day as me, May 30th. He was born in the 60s, I was born in the 50s, but we both have May 30th, Memorial Day, as our birthdays. So anyway, yeah, I met him in Delaram, northern Helmand Province, in Afghanistan. He's an interpreter, had returned there, and I'd heard he was a Hollywood actor at this event that he was doing some translating at, which got my attention. And so when there was a little bit of a meal afterwards, I happened to sit near him, or actually across from him, and so I said, Hollywood, in fact, his name tag, instead of, you know, mine would say Moffett, his just said Hollywood. And
did he have glasses on?
Well, he had a big beard. He had an American uniform on, but by design, he had long hair and a beard, which, you know, Marines shave every day. I shaved before I came down here. And but to connect with the locals and the native Afghans, he maintained that the big beard as a translator, which helped him to connect with the locals. So, yeah, I talked to him, and of course, as an actor, you know, actors tend to be extroverted,
right,
you know, and charismatic, and I said, do you want to do an interview too? I got my recorder. He said, sure, of course. And so I learned a little bit about his journey, and he wanted to do a book. And he speaks many languages. His English is maybe his fifth or sixth language, so he would have and did need some help, putting a book together. So we stayed in touch after we both came back from Afghanistan, and eventually outlined his story, and eventually found a publisher out in California who was very appropriate for us. Dale Dye and his wife, Dr. Julia Dye. Dale is maybe the top military guy in Hollywood. If you've seen Platoon,
Yeah.
he's the company commander in that. Academy Award for Best Picture back in 1986, I think. Anyway, they have Warriors Publishing Group, does certain military books, and I had met Dale at an event earlier in the year when I was still in uniform, and eventually I kind of married up Warriors Publishing Group and Fahim, and they looked at him and his story, and they kind of made us prove ourselves that we were serious about working hard to put this together, and eventually we got it out, and it won the award, Gold Medal Award, is the top military biography in 2012 from the Military Writers Society of America. So
This is more of an autobiography of Fahim's life, or
yeah, it is. It's his whole life. It includes his early days in Kabul back in the 60s, 70s. His mother was a midwife for the president of Afghanistan. And his father worked in a bank in Kabul. So they were, fairly upper middle class for Afghan standards. And then the communists took over, and things went to crap, if I can say that.
that's when I believe the Mujahideen or
Yeah, the Mujahideen, the
Mujahideen. There you go.
freedom fighters' resistance to the communists, particularly the Soviets, after 1979, went on a jihad, holy war, to expel the Soviets from Afghanistan. Eventually successfully. Who'd have thought that back in 1980?
That was their Vietnam.
It was. Many people, like you said, Kevin, have termed that as the Soviet Union's Vietnam, where they got stuck in a quagmire that not only did they withdraw, but eventually the Soviet Union imploded or fell apart like 2 years later, and Afghanistan had a lot to do with that.
Are they the same as those of the Taliban, or is there a mixture? And how does Sharia play into all of this? Is that in the book?
A little bit, yeah. Actually, there's a lot of cultural background and explanations that are part of Fahim's story. Yeah, you mentioned Sharia. The Taliban, the Wahhabis want to impose strict Islamic or Sharia law. In fact, they did. When the Taliban had power from 1996 to 2001, they were the strictest, most fundamentalist Sharia-type regime. Women had to wear burqas, and there was no freedom at all. So that's the Taliban ideology or religion, Sharia law, which we overthrew in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks.
Right. So I'm curious, he must have a completely different perspective of America not being the great Satan, if you will, and because he lives here now, and he's enjoying the fruits of being free, and going over there and interpreting. I don't know if he's still doing that at all, or.
Well, no, his contract as an interpreter ended in 2010, and so he stepped away. He's gone back to Hollywood. Kevin, but you mentioned the Great Satan, which is kind of an Iranian term.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right next door to Afghanistan. But I will mention, speaking of the Great Satan or Iran, that Fahim had a small speaking role in Argo, Ben Affleck's film that just won the Academy Award for Best Picture.
I love the movie. It was great. It was good.
Yeah, Fahim had a small role towards the end. Of course, he spoke Farsi and was one of the bad guys, as always. He's typecast that way.
Was he in the airport?
A lot of people ask me that. He was not one of the people at the airport. He was at the Canadian embassy after they all escaped. He was in the embassy. He's all ticked off. Where'd they go? Where'd they go?
Okay.
He was in there in that scene. So but to answer your earlier question, no, he would not be one to think of America as the great Satan. He would and does think of America as a wonderful land of opportunity. He loves America. He says it all the time because he has been able to come here and make a career and become a citizen and learn English and be in movies and write a book.
Is he struggling at this time in his prosperity still with xenophobic type of people looking at him with a jaundiced eye, if you will?
Yeah. Yes, to answer that, it's in the book, actually. Right after 9/11, he was in Las Vegas, and his neighbors back in California in Dana Point, or one neighbor, sadly was gone, and notified the authorities that their Afghan-American neighbor disappeared after 9/11. Of course, the airports were shut down. He was stuck in Nevada and then New Mexico. So eventually the FBI came looking for him.
Oh, boy.
And they, so here he's an American citizen, patriotic American citizen, and suddenly the FBI's trying to track him down and question him. And he's always been wonderful about that. People who know him, love him. He's a great guy, but he could speak to this better than me. But that's one example. You mentioned xenophobia or people looking at someone like Fahim, especially after 9/11, with a jaundiced eye, if you will. And in fact, he kind of kids about it that he plays a terrorist on TV and in movies.
Oh, God.
And he
well,
tries to look scary on TV, but he's a wonderful guy.
It's interesting. We had this whole incident with the movie Argo, and now everybody's talking about Benghazi. It's almost they're talking about 30 survivors that are being told to be quiet, and I think everybody's starting to wonder, well, is this a repeat of back then? But maybe everybody's putting the cabal on it, if you will.
I had similar thoughts, Kevin. I mean, they're very different situations, but the notion of diplomatic personnel being like attacked or kidnapped or murdered in Libya, as similar things happen in Iran. I absolutely was thinking, similar thoughts about Islamic fundamentalist types coming after our diplomats.
Yeah, it's interesting. This book is going to be a bestseller. You said that somebody's already looking at making a movie about the book itself?
Yeah, like I said, it's won an award. I wouldn't say it's a bestseller yet, but getting on shows like this.
Right. Well, this is one of the best shows in town.
Hopefully, it'll become a bestseller after your show airs,
Absolutely.
Kevin.
Just one of those little guys.
Well, it's a natural, that Fahim would be interested in having somebody eventually look at his story and turn it into a prospective, possible screenplay, And actually, there's already been some movement and some preliminary efforts to put together like a treatment, they call it, a broad outline for how a movie might be developed. Of course, he's an actor. Tom Hanks wrote a blurb for our cover, and Fahim has worked with him in Charlie Wilson's War, for which Fahim was cultural technical advisor. Philip Seymour Hoffman, Julia Roberts. He's worked with a lot of people. Robert Redford in Lions for Lambs.
I've heard of a couple of them. But,
yeah. So he's of that world, and I think he would not be averse to having his story become a movie. I'm sure our publishers will see this interview at some point, so I don't want to be too enthusiastic because there are countless ideas and treatments and scripts and screenplays floating around out there. But, of course, everybody thinks their story is film-worthy. But I believe that. And a lot of people who've read his story and know Fahim say that his journey, there's so many different pieces of it. His escape from Afghanistan, his journey to America, coming to America. I guess there's a movie already made, Coming to America, but his Hollywood stuff, his going back to his home country with the Marines, and where the Taliban put a price on his head. It's what a remarkable story. In fact, I think he's perhaps the only Screen Actors Guild member, and if I'm wrong, this will eventually come out, but I think he's like the only one who put a uniform on at age 43 and went to war. Pat Tillman, the NFL player,
Right,
who went back to being in uniform, went to join the Army and was eventually killed in Afghanistan. Fahim worked on the Pat Tillman story. And it's a Pat Tillman-esque type aspect to his Fahim story that he, at age 43, certainly didn't need to, go back to Afghanistan. Of course, he was well paid as a contractor, but he asked to be with the Marines in Helmand Province, which is probably the most dangerous place, one of the most dangerous jobs to have. He didn't need to do that, but he asked to be with the Marines. The other interpreter says, what are you, crazy? They're going to drag you out on patrol and you're going to get blown up. But he wanted that, and I admire that. Of course, that's why I met him. I am a Marine, and I met him in Helmand Province. And
so he put his life at risk for
absolutely
American lives.
Yeah, to great effect.
Where is your role in writing in this? How are you involved with this, or helping him with this publication?
Well, like I said, we met in Afghanistan, stayed in touch. The end of 2010, we were both back in America, and I flew out to California a couple of times and met with him, and I interviewed him and made some notes, and I kind of outlined, if we put a book together, here are some of the things that we would develop. And eventually, I wrote some sample chapters and met directly, finally, with Dale Dye's wife, Julia, Dr. Julia Dye, who became once they looked at his story and talked to us, they agreed to give it a shot and try to help us to put it together. It took a year, and it's got 12 chapters, and I'll tell you that I worked pretty hard on it for the year, interviewing Fahim and putting together the initial draft. And then Julia Dr. Dye is a very, I don't want to say demanding, although probably has high standards. And so it was a lot of back and forth for months on every chapter, or on all the chapters, till we got it to a point where it was ready to be published. And like I said, it's been very wonderful reviews, and it's won the Gold Medal Award. And
when you were interviewing our Marines, did that help you in the process of writing this book as well, giving you a perspective on anything?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kevin. Being in Afghanistan and seeing the country and talking to the Marines who worked and fought there, gave me a sense of the country and the dynamics there that I could not have gained had I not been in Afghanistan. So, talking to all the Marines and being there and traveling around Afghanistan gave me at least a little sense of the country. And I like to read. I read a lot, and did some homework, and so I had at least a little bit of a sense of the history of Afghanistan and the culture and the dynamics. So I could ask Fahim certain questions, and we could address, some cultural issues that are part of his story growing up and then returning to Afghanistan.
How will soldiers view this book? When they pick up this book, will they have an interest in this as well?
Yeah, I hope so. As we continue to try to raise awareness about it, soldiers, Marines in particular, because he was with the Marines, but military people. I know your son was in Afghanistan, and anybody has an interest in the military period, male, female, young or old. I mean, it's a war story, a military story. So I think anybody who is interested in the military culture would be interested in the last part of the book, which focuses on being with the Marines. He trained at Fort Benning, an Army base, before he hooked up with the Marines. So it's a war story, a military story that I think military people have and hopefully will enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Well, interesting. How can people get a copy of this? Is it at Barnes & Nobles? Or?
Yep. I'm glad you asked, Kevin. Fahim Speaks. It's Fahim, Fahim Speaks. And Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. Yeah, if you go to Amazon, you can order it up for what, $12 or whatever it is. And yeah, we've been very happy to have people click on and order up. And it's not really available for the most part in stores. It is on demand through Amazon.
Which means you can get it anywhere.
You can get it any place you have a
Online.
computer and a
Exactly.
credit card, yes.
Exactly. Is there going to be a follow-up book or anything in the works on?
Well, actually, if you go to the FahimSpeaks.com website, which is huge, there's all kinds of sections to that website, which Fahim himself is pretty much put together. And he does a lot of YouTube stuff, too. He's a great promoter. Yeah, he has some ideas for a book or a couple of books down the road, more fiction type.
Will you be involved with that as well?
Yeah, we've talked about that possibly. I'm more of a historian, nonfiction type of guy, although I have done a little bit in the fiction realm. So he's a little bit ahead of me on that. Right now, my focus is more to promote our existing product and also to do some work in the embryonic stages of putting together a film proposal.
Now, if they do make a film, would they potentially do any kind of filming here in New Hampshire? Yeah, I know this is in Afghanistan, but we got mountains.
Well, I know that's come up a couple times, and again, we're very early in the process. But yes, I actually got some pictures of the White Mountains, which I've hiked many times, and I've been in Afghanistan too, and I can see some filming being done in the presidential range up above the timberline.
Right.
You know, in fact, even today I have had some back and forth with some people in Concord who are with the New Hampshire Film Bureau, and you know, they're interested in learning some preliminary information about how this might happen. On Golden Pond, of course, famously won the Academy Award for Best Picture, 1981, I think. Was filmed up just south of the White Mountains.
With Jane Fonda and her.
Squam Lake. Jane Fonda spent some time, I guess she used to work out in the Plymouth State weight room. And I remember the football coach making a point to go in there and work out with her, and I guess she kind of kicked him out, which is kind of a different funny story. But yeah, there is some history of filming done in New Hampshire. Now, there's all kinds of, you know, New Hampshire was going to be a right-to-work state, not right-to-work state. Those are some issues that you know, I need to get smarter on or whatever.
Ask me anything you want to know. I'm a former state legislator.
Okay.
We can talk off camera.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We may need some advice or whatever. But yeah, to answer your question, will that happen? Who knows? I mean, I would love to see if it moves forward, and if some company buys the option to whatever proposal that we eventually put together, to at least make a case for doing some filming in New Hampshire. I mean, I can see it. Maybe you can see it. You know, the people in California, more apt to say New Hampshire. You know, where's that?
Why not?
Well, that's what the guy in Concord said. Why not? So anyway, yeah, we're going to, you know, or I'm certainly going to at least try to put New Hampshire on the radar screen of the decision makers ultimately. But
right.
we'll see.
Sure. What else would you like our viewers to know about the book? And there is a website. You said there's Fahim.
FahimSpeaks.com. Again, Fahim is F-A-H-I-M, speaks.com. Yeah, website has all kinds of stuff. Links.
Do you have a website as well?
I have a blog,
that's
available through the website, which has all kinds of photos, there's pictures of him with all kinds of movie stars, picture of him with the Commandant of the Marines, who was the assistant commandant at the time where they met in Afghanistan. On and on, you know, film clips. There's a ABC World News Tonight feature story that was done on him, human interest story, which I've sent links. It's on YouTube. I've sent some links after that, which is really Charles Gibson actually introduced it. Miguel Marquez, who was with ABC at the time, did a really nice segment on Fahim in doing his thing in Afghanistan. So yeah, the website has all kinds of information, and yeah, FahimSpeaks.com.
I think I've seen him on Twitter too. I'm almost sure I have.
Yeah, oh gosh, he's out there, you know, working the website and putting YouTubes out there, and
So you can get a general sense of who he is, what he's all about, and what's in the book possibly, and
oh, sure.
how to order the book, and
Yep.
how to get in contact or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, is there any final thoughts you want to leave with our viewers?
Again, Kevin, I'm pleased that you noticed our book and took some time to talk to me. And yeah, I just, anybody who thinks they might be interested in Afghanistan or the Marines or Hollywood or a love story, an adventure story, there's a lot here. And there's some lessons too. You know, there's some lessons about patriotism and perseverance and cultural sensitivity, and you know how Americans could and should better understand other cultures, and how someone who's from another culture has learned to understand and love America. I mean, I think there's some wonderful lessons and stories there that I hope some folks will check out.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us and coming on the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Great to be here.
And thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles, and we hope you order the book. It does sound very interesting, and it's readily available on Amazon.com. So until next week, thanks for watching.